Yeah, I think there's a good bit of cynicism in Irish society today towards politics, and I think it's easy to understand why. I think a lot of politicians lost the run of themselves, and I think the last government was quite out of touch with the people and paid a heavy price for that. An exception, I think, to that would have been the late Brian Lanahan, who to me was a man of vision, a statesman who wanted to look to the future rather than just the situation as it was at a particular time. And unfortunately fate dealt him a difficult hand, both in terms of world politics, local politics, national politics, and his health. And he's no longer with us. And we can't, being very parochial about it, we can't but be proud of the fact that we have a Mayo Taoiseach and a Mayo Minister of State, and we have good public representatives here. And from a Fianna Fáil point of view, which I am still happy to be involved with and proud to represent, I think that the party will rebuild. I think it has learned a hard lesson, and I think it will rebuild. I think it will produce new quality candidates in the future and become a very relevant force in Irish politics again. But having said that, I hope they will never forget the lessons that they've learned in the last year, that ultimately who governs us is a decision that belongs to the people. And if you forget about that, and if you forget about that aspect of democracy, that everything is in the hands of the people, I think any party that forgets that will do so at their peril. But I would be optimistic enough that Fianna Fáil will come back. Having said that, I think it's good for democracy that they would, and that people would have choices going forward.
Would I be correct in saying that we don't have enough leadership nowadays in politicians, and that everything is about giving people what they want? I've heard that you have to give them what they want, but people will demand a lot.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, and I'm not making a party political point when I say that. I think deep down, though, I have this feeling that people respect you. They mightn't agree with what you say or what you do, but if they think you do it for the right reasons, for noble reasons, for philanthropic reasons, and in the best interest of the country, they mightn't be happy with what you do, but I think they'll respect you for it. And I think you need real political leadership for that to happen. And I think it's going to be needed. That kind of leadership is going to be needed in this country for many years to come.
Because we fight as part of the public, I think we think that politicians find it impossible to say no to anybody about anything.
Yeah. I think probably that was a culture that developed over the years. I think the situation that we're in now, economic situation, and the number of people out of work and everything else, and all the other negatives that are there in Irish political life, I think difficult decisions will have to be made, greater productivity will have to be achieved, and that will mean that harsh decisions will have to be taken. And nobody wants to pay water charges, nobody wants to pay property taxes or anything else, but I think all of these things are going to become an issue in the future. The only thing that I would hope is that decisions aren't taken on the size of people's properties or anything like that, because there's many a pauper living in a big enough house, and I think that the essential criteria for imposing taxes on people is to in some way find a way that will measure their ability to pay, and that to me is the fairest way of all.
Would that include means testing?
I think it probably would include means testing at times, and in some instances. And
my own view is we can't solve this problem until we do introduce means testing.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't disagree with that. But I do feel that it requires. I think politics has reached a stage now where it has to stop telling people what. Our politicians have reached a stage where they have to stop telling people what they think people want to hear, and tell them what they need to hear, and in order to do that, I think you have to consider the welfare of future generations, and take decisions now that will stand to our country in the future.
Can you see us getting out of the hole we're in?
I can, yeah, I can. I can see that happening. I'm not an economist, but I can see a lot of people in the last 2 years in particular. I can see a lot of people caring more about each other than they did during the years of the Celtic Tiger, when everybody seemed to be very self-centred, looking to what they had themselves and deciding that they wanted more or needed more. And I think that's gradually changing, and I can see that even in a church context. I can see people maybe returning to faith, and faith being maybe more in their lives than it had been in the past, and maybe a lot of people beginning to realise that they can't paddle their own canoe up all the time, that maybe there's a superior being there that's keeping an eye out for us all as well, and that we should become more aware of that, and maybe that religion has a real role to play in our lives in the future. But I do feel, and I feel very strongly about this, that people pulling together and people looking out for each other and caring for each other, that this country will be great again.